Ciao, sono Anna e questo è My Italian Circle. Eccoci al fine! It's been a long time since we published a video about the language of opera. We have all been very busy with the grammar lessons and listening practice. But I hope your love for Italian extends to art and music as well. So here we are with one of the most famous operas in Italian of all times, Le nozze di Figaro by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. I will explain the main songs of this highly entertaining work, and you'll have the chance to learn more about the quaint, evocative and poetic language of opera. As always, our patrons on Patreon get additional content on today's topic. Su il sipario! Opera was born in Italy around the year 1600, and it soon became a hit. It was the popular music of the 18th and 19th century, and everybody loved to sing the catchy tunes of their favorite works over and over. The Marriage of Figaro was a sensation, and after the Prague premiere of 1787, Mozart himself wrote "Everybody talks about Figaro. Nobody plays, sings, whistles anything but the Figaro. No one goes to any other opera but the Figaro. Forever Figaro." Figaro. It's a familiar name, isn't it? We talked about him in our video on The Barber of Seville by Gioacchino Rossini. It's the same character, a cunning jack of all trades that always gets his way. In Mozart's work, this means marrying the beautiful Susanna. The story is extremely complicated and it involves 4 couples and a lot of hiding, plotting, cross-dressing and quarreling. At one point, Figaro even finds out that he is the son of 2 other characters and that he was kidnapped as a baby. Opera buffa or soap opera? But all is well that ends well, and The Marriage of Figaro is full of happy endings. Let's dive right into it and listen to our first aria, Voi che sapete. It includes many of the features that are typical of opera language. I'll show you the Italian text and an English translation. Povero Cherubino si strugge d'amore. The young page Cherubino sings about the love and passion he feels for all women. His language is very old-fashioned and poetic, which ultimately creates a hilarious effect. First of all, notice how the final word of every verse has lost its final vowel. Amor instead of amore, voler instead of volere, saper instead of sapere, and so on. This is because in poetry and singing the stress is often placed on the last syllable of a verse, and to do this in Italian you need to either use a word stressed on its final vowel, like ridirò, cos'è, così, or to cut a word short. This is called apocope, a very popular expressive device that is still widely used in contemporary music. Cherubino also uses many poetic words that you can find in Italian poetry up to the 20th century. They are very common in opera language, so it's worth learning them and their modern equivalent.
Cor, desir, diletto, alma, martir, languir.
The language of most of the other songs in this opera is a bit different. Even if Lorenzo da Ponte wrote this libretto in 1786, his language is quite modern and understandable even today. We hear it in this famous cavatina, sung by Figaro at the beginning of the work.
Se vuol ballare, signor Contino, il chitarrino le suonerò. Se vuol venire nella mia scuola, la capriola le insegnerò.
Figaro is very clever, but he's not a nobleman, and his language is relatively simple and direct. He calls the Count, his rival in love, Contino, little Count. Even if Figaro is his servant, he finds a way to make fun of him by using a diminutive suffix. In the comedy by Pierre Beaumarchais that was written only a few years before this opera, Figaro's monologues are fierce attacks against the aristocracy and its privileges. But here, Lorenzo da Ponte tempers his revolutionary fervor to avoid censorship. Figaro's facility with words and mockery shines again in another famous aria, sung at the end of the first act to Cherubino. The young page is being punished by the Count for chasing all the women at his court, including the Countess, and he is to be sent off as a soldier. This aria was so successful that Mozart used it again in his later opera Don Giovanni.
Non vedrai farfallone amoroso, notte e giorno d'intorno girando, alle belle turbando il riposo, Narcisetto adoncino d'amor. Non più avrai questi bei pennacchini, quel cappello leggero galante, quella chioma, quell'aria brillante, quel vermiglio donnesco color, quel vermiglio donnesco color.
Figaro calls Cherubino farfallone, big butterfly, using another suffix to paint a hilarious picture of the young page, and tells him that he will no longer be able to fly around troubling the sleep of beautiful women, le belle. He also calls him Narcisetto and Adoncino, again using suffixes to make fun of him. He tells him non più andrai and non più avrai. In modern language we would say non andrai più and non avrai più. You will no longer go, you will no longer have. Chioma is another word for capelli, hair, and we still use it today. It conveys the image of a big head of hair. Cherubino also has quel vermiglio donnesco color, a red color on his cheeks that is typical of women. Donnesco. Let's conclude with the sparkling ending of this opera, when the four couples are happily reunited and all characters come out on the stage and sing how happy they will be. Tutti contenti saremo così. This interminable crazy day has ended in cheerfulness, allegria and joy. Let's all celebrate. Corriamo tutti a festeggiare.
Corriamo tutti, 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 corriamo
I hope you enjoy this foray into the language of opera. An entire section of our website is devoted to classical music, opera and music terminology, so check it out. If you're a fan, have a look at our previous videos on opera in Italian. Next week we'll go back to our beloved listening practice, il nostro amato ascolto in italiano. Ci vediamo la settimana prossima. Ciao! Ciao, sono Anna e questo è My Italian Circle!
tutti!